Disclaimer. I apologize in advance for any words that may sound unclear or mumbled. The AI narrator used was a more affordable option, but I took care to ensure that it wouldn't interfere with the flow of the story. You may notice some sentences are slightly compressed, and if you hear the word dot between words, it's likely due to the period being read aloud as part of the sentence.
Chapter 1. Rain poured in heavy sheets, soaking the gravel road and drowning out the small voice that screamed after the red taillights disappearing into the distance. A little girl stood trembling, black hair plastered to her face, her thin arms wrapped tightly around herself. "No. Please, please come back," she cried, her voice cracking under the weight of panic. "I'll be good, I promise." The words vanished into the wind as the car turned the corner and vanished. The only answer was the steady drum of rain and the soft crunch of her bare feet shifting in the mud. She stood frozen in place, sobs ripping from her chest, unsure whether to run or collapse. The sky was dark, the trees on either side tall and shadowed. There were no houses, no signs, no shelter, just her and the awful silence that followed abandonment. After what felt like forever, she dropped to her knees on the side of the road, muddy water soaking through her dress. Her tiny hands clutched at the ground, like if she held on tight enough, anyone might come. But no one did. 12 years later. The shrill buzz of an alarm clock shattered the early morning silence. Abby Strickland groaned, burying her face in the pillow before reaching out with a sleepy hand to smack the snooze button. It took 2 tries. She lay there for a moment, eyes half open, before finally dragging herself out of bed. Her room was neat, colorful, and full of life, photos of her with friends, sparkly makeup containers on her desk, a stack of dance shoes in the corner. A calendar on the wall had today's square circled in pink marker. Competition practice. Do not be late. She tied her short black hair back into a ponytail, brushed her teeth and pulled on her black leotard and sweats. It was automatic by now, school first, then dance practice after. Dance was her life. It made her feel like she belonged, like she had purpose. Downstairs, the smell of coffee drifted from the kitchen. Her mom's voice echoed faintly from the living room, already on a work call. Her dad was likely finishing his run or preparing Abby's water bottle like he always did. Abby checked herself once more in the mirror. She looked put together, confident, but underneath the surface her stomach twisted. Today mattered more than most. She needed to prove herself. To remind them she belonged. The sound of clinking silverware and the scent of scrambled eggs filled the kitchen as Abby sat at the table, fidgeting with the corner of her napkin. Her breakfast sat untouched. Her dad slid a water bottle into her dance bag by the door like he did every morning. "You're quiet today," he said, glancing over. "Everything okay?" Abby hesitated, then sighed. "I don't know. I really want to do good today. We've got that new routine and I just feel like everyone's watching me, waiting for me to slip up." Her mom looked up from her coffee. "Abby, you've been practicing nonstop. You've got this." "I know," she said, twisting the napkin tighter. "It's just everyone else makes it look easy, and if I mess up even once." "You've never messed up," her dad cut in gently. "Not once. You're one of the most dedicated kids I've ever seen, and we're not just saying that because we're your parents." Her mom nodded. "You bring your heart into every move. That's something no one can fake." Abby managed a small smile. "Thanks. I just want to make the team proud." Her dad gave her a reassuring squeeze on the shoulder. "Forget the team. Just make yourself proud." That helped out a little. She picked up her fork and took a bite, trying to push the nerves down. Today was going to be fine. She'd show up, do her best, and everything would fall into place. At least that's what she told herself. Tough to do. The dance studio floor echoed with every step of Abby's sneakers as she walked in, the scent of sweat and floor polish instantly familiar. She wasn't even fully through the door when her teacher's voice snapped across the room. "Nice of you to finally join us, Abby." She froze for a second, eyes darting around. There was only one other girl there, still stretching at the far mirror. Abby had barely walked in behind her. "I'm sorry," she said quietly, setting her bag down by the wall. "I came straight from school." "No excuses," the teacher said, arms crossed. Her expression was sharp, lips pursed like she was already exhausted with Abby's existence. "This team needs discipline, not slackers." Abby didn't argue. She just nodded, pulling off her warm-up sweats and taking her place on the floor. She knew better than to try defending herself. It wouldn't matter. As the rest of the team trickled in, Abby warmed up like she always did, focused, precise, heart-pounding, not from nerves, but from a drive to prove herself. Her movements were crisp, every stretch deliberate. By the time they were ready to begin, she was already in the zone. Their teacher clapped her hands. "All right, listen up. Competition season is right around the corner. We're behind schedule and frankly, I'm not seeing enough urgency." She paced slowly, heels clicking. "There will be no room for mistakes. Not one. If you're not ready, you'll be replaced. That's not a threat, it's a reality. Understood?" A few girls nodded. Abby did too, though her jaw was tight. She was more than ready, she lived for this. But under this teacher's glare, she felt like she had to re-earn her spot every single day. They moved into choreography and Abby gave it everything. Each move was fluid, every turn controlled, and her form didn't falter once. The teacher didn't comment. Not a nod. Not a word. But Abby caught a few of the other girls watching her, and not with pity. With admiration. She held on to that. Even if the teacher didn't see her, her teammates did. Still, something in the air felt off. As if something was shifting quietly beneath the surface, and this was just the beginning. As practice ended, sweat clung to Abby's skin and her chest heaved from exertion. She grabbed her towel and started toward the wall when she heard her name. "Abby," Mrs. Lynch called. "A word, please." The other girls glanced over, curious but silent. Abby's stomach dropped. She followed her teacher to the side hallway near the supply closet. It wasn't uncommon for Mrs. Lynch to pull someone aside for a quick correction or critique. Still, Abby's nerves buzzed. Mrs. Lynch leaned against the wall, arms crossed, that same unreadable look on her face. "I've been watching you," she said plainly. Abby swallowed. "Okay. You're fine. Technically. You don't mess up. You're consistent. But I'm afraid you've grown complacent." The words hit like ice water. "Complacent?" Abby asked, her voice small. I've been working really hard. I've stayed late, practiced at home. I haven't missed." Mrs. Lynch raised a hand. "Abby, I'm not questioning your effort. But effort isn't enough in this business. You're comfortable. There's no spark anymore. No hunger. Not compared to the other girls." Abby stood there frozen. Her hands trembled at her sides. "I think it's time to give someone else a chance," Mrs. Lynch continued, voice smooth, almost gentle. "Someone who wants it a little more." "I do want it," Abby said, barely above a whisper. "I love this team." Mrs. Lynch smiled like it was already decided. "This isn't personal. Sometimes people plateau and that's okay. It just means it's time for something new." Abby didn't say anything. She couldn't. "Take the weekend off," Mrs. Lynch added, already turning away. "Focus on school. Life has a way of opening new doors." The hallway felt colder now and emptier. Abby stood there long after her teacher had gone, her eyes brimming with tears she refused to let fall. She had done everything right. Every move, every hour, every ounce of herself. And somehow, it still wasn't enough. The school doors creaked open as Abby stepped outside, dance bag slung over her shoulder, her face pale and stiff. The sun had just started dipping behind the clouds, casting a dull gray over the parking lot. Her mom's car waited at the curb like always. She didn't make it halfway to the car before her chest started to cave in. She opened the door and dropped into the passenger seat, but the moment she closed it behind her, the dam broke. Her mom turned with concern just as Abby covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "Abby?" she asked softly, reaching out. "What happened?" Abby tried to speak, but it came out in pieces. She said I'm complacent. She said I don't want it enough. She kicked me off the team." Her mother's face tightened. "What?" "I didn't do anything wrong," Abby choked out. "I've been trying so hard. I didn't miss a single class. I never slacked. I never even talked back." "Oh, sweetheart." Her mom leaned across the center console and pulled Abby into her arms. Abby let herself fall into the hug, sobbing against her mother's shoulder like she was 6 years old again. Her mom just held her, brushing a hand through her hair. "She said it wasn't personal," Abby muttered bitterly. "But it felt personal." "I'm so sorry," her mom whispered. "You didn't deserve that. Not for a second." The car was quiet except for the sound of Abby's crying and her mom's steady, calm breathing as she held her daughter close. Eventually, Abby pulled away and wiped her eyes. "I don't know what to do now. Dance was everything." Her mom took her hand. "Then we'll find a way to keep it in your life. You don't have to stop dancing just because someone else couldn't see your worth. Abby didn't respond right away, but she nodded. Slowly, gratefully. Her heart was still broken. But at least she wasn't alone. Chapter 3. The next morning, the school halls were buzzing like usual, slamming lockers, half-finished homework being compared in whispers, the low hum of adolescent chaos. But Abby moved a little slower than she used to, walking between her two best friends, Kendra and Layla, who flanked her like protective bookends. I still can't believe she did that, Kendra muttered, shaking her head. Complacent? Please. You were the only one who could nail that triple spin. Exactly. Layla added, flipping her braid over her shoulder. She just didn't like that you weren't her little puppet. That woman's a hag. Abby let out a quiet laugh. You guys don't have to hype me up. We're not hyping, Kendra said. We're telling the truth. That whole team's going to fall apart without you. Layla smirked. And honestly, your dad probably thinks this is the best thing ever. Abby glanced sideways. Why? Because, Layla said with a grin, he hated those tiny uniforms Mrs. Lynch made you wear. You could tell every time he picked you up, he looked like he was about to file a lawsuit. Kendra burst out laughing. Remember when he tried to casually hand her a sweater before practice? Yeah, and she said, it's part of the brand, sir, and your dad just stared at her like she had two heads. Abby laughed, a real laugh this time, the first one since yesterday. Okay, that was pretty funny. The three of them kept walking, their footsteps lightening with every step. For a moment, the weight on Abby's chest didn't feel so crushing. Sure, things had fallen apart. But maybe not everything had to stay broken. The house was unusually quiet for a Friday night. No music from Abby's room. No tapping feet on the hardwood floor. Just the low hum of the refrigerator and the weight of silence. Ethan sat on the couch, flipping aimlessly through the channels, while Kelly stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, her brow furrowed with worry. She's not herself, Kelly said softly. She didn't even touch her dinner. Just said she was tired and went to bed. She's crushed, Ethan replied, not taking his eyes off the screen, though he wasn't really watching it. And I don't blame her. You give something your whole heart and then someone tells you it's not good enough. She was good enough, Kelly snapped. She was more than good enough. Ethan finally looked over, eyes tired but firm. Lynch never gave her a fair shot. I knew something was off with that woman. Kelly nodded slowly. This wasn't about Abby's ability. It was about control. Lynch needed someone to push around, and Abby wasn't the type to break. She's trying so hard to hold it together. But I can see it. It's eating her alive. There was a pause. We need to do something, Kelly said. She needs a mentor who actually supports her, not someone who tears her down. Ethan leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. You thinking what I'm thinking? Kelly gave a small smile. We find her a better teacher. One who lifts her up, not drags her down. Someone who sees how talented she really is. They sat in silence for a moment, the idea settling between them like a flicker of hope. Neither of them knew what that decision would bring, or who it would invite into their lives. Later that night, the glow of a laptop lit up the kitchen table as Ethan scrolled through listings, reading out loud while Kelly leaned over his shoulder. Okay, here's one. 30 years of experience, worked with 2 national teams, and $200 an hour. Kelly let out a low whistle. Well, that's... yeah, no. She probably teaches ballerinas with billion-dollar sponsors, Ethan muttered. He clicked the back arrow. There's no way we can swing that. Not weekly. We could cut back on a few things, Kelly offered, but it came out half-hearted. Cancel the gym, put off the vacation. Even then it's too steep, Ethan said, rubbing his temples. You're still catching up from last quarter's overtime cuts, and the school's been stingy with sub-hours. I know. Kelly exhaled. I hate that money is what's deciding this. She deserves something good after everything. She does, Ethan agreed. But we can't sink the ship trying to give it to her. Kelly reached over and closed the laptop gently. We'll keep looking. There has to be someone out there who's talented and accessible. Ethan gave a small nod. Someone who actually gives a damn. They sat quietly for a moment, the weight of disappointment sitting between them like fog. Outside Abby's door, the soft hum of music had finally returned. A sign she hadn't completely shut the world out. Kelly glanced toward the sound, her voice softer now. We'll find her someone, Ethan. Someone who sees her the way we do. Ethan's gaze lingered on the laptop screen, still glowing faintly with search results. "Yeah," he said. "We will." Kelly reopened the laptop as Ethan returned from refilling his coffee. The two of them sat side by side, scrolling through yet another wave of instructors, some too far, some too expensive, some too vague to even consider. "I feel like we've looked through 50, Ethan muttered. 55, Kelly corrected, sighing. "And the only one we could technically afford had a studio in the back of a laundromat. I mean, nothing says inspiration like the smell of fabric softener and wet socks." Kelly laughed quietly, then suddenly froze. "Wait. Hold on." She tapped one of the listings near the bottom of the page. The profile was simple, clean white background, no fancy logo. Just a photo of a young woman standing in front of a mirror, her dark hair pulled back in a high bun, expression calm but confident. She couldn't have been older than 19. Danielle, private dance instruction. 5.0. Focused, kind, and deeply skilled. My daughter found her confidence again. Danielle brings professionalism and warmth. She pushed my kid just enough and made her feel seen. Best decision we made. There weren't many reviews, but the ones that were there had heart. Real parents, real kids. All of them satisfied. Kelly blinked. She's charging $60 an hour. That's affordable. Suspiciously affordable, Ethan added, raising an eyebrow. She's barely out of high school. Maybe, Kelly said slowly, but this isn't some influencer with a ring light. Look at how the reviews are written. They're honest, thoughtful. Ethan leaned in, studying the photo. You think she's legit? I think she's trying, Kelly said. And maybe that's exactly the kind of person Abby needs right now. They exchanged a look. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Ethan nodded once. Set up a meeting. Kelly clicked the contact button. Chapter 4: Janelle's story. The sanctuary was still. The kind of still that only came when no one dared even breathe too loud. Janelle, 16, stood at the front with a microphone in one hand and the other clutched tightly around her wrist. She didn't cry. She didn't shake. But the way her voice carried, quiet, raw, and open, cut through every wall in the room. I don't remember everything, she said. And maybe that's for the best. But I remember enough. Her eyes stayed low, her voice calm and deliberate. I was 8 years old. And I was taken. She paused. The first night was horrible. That's the only word I know to use. I was molested, raped, and just left there in a dark room. No remorse, no apologies. I learned really fast that kindness didn't exist in that house. A murmur of emotion moved through the room, but she kept going. The second night wasn't any better. I kept hoping it would be, but it wasn't. I had bruises I didn't remember getting. And I couldn't even cry loud because I didn't want them to come back in the room. She took a slow breath. I was there for over a week. And every day I saw things that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. I saw things that made me question whether people were really even people anymore. How can human beings be so cruel? So heartless? She looked out now, her eyes scanning the faces, locking with no one and everyone. I thought I had seen the worst. Thought it couldn't get worse. Her voice dropped a little. And then, one night, they did something I still don't have words for. Janelle swallowed. There were 3 of us in that house. Me, another girl who was maybe 7 or 8, and a 10-year-old girl. The 10-year-old. She seemed like she'd been there a while. Like maybe she'd been in places like that before. She was quiet, she did what they said. She didn't cry, not at first, like she had trained herself not to. Abby felt her heart sink, a coldness in her chest. She didn't even realize she was holding her breath. Janelle's lip trembled. And then, they took her. Stripped her of all her clothes. Her voice grew tighter with every word. They lined up 0.9 of them, 0.9 grown men. They were told that they could do whatever they wanted to her. And they did. Janelle's face twisted like she was fighting something inside her. She broke, Janelle whispered. She begged. I'd never seen someone so brave fall apart like that. She screamed, cried, begged them not to. Someone behind Abby quietly wept. They made me and the other girl watch. Her voice cracked. I didn't look away, that I couldn't, that I wish I had. I wish I could say I tried to stop them or did something. But I was just frozen, helpless. They did such terrible things to her, all for sexual pleasure. I'm surprised she wasn't dead by the end of it. When they were all finished with her, they just walked away like they just finished eating lunch. Like it was no big deal. The girl just lied there squirming around in pain, screaming and crying. one hand between her legs and the other trying to hold every other part of her body that hurt. I still see her in my sleep. Did I still ask God why I couldn't save her? The church was completely still. No coughs, no shuffling, just silence and tears. When the police came, they rescued me and the other girl. But the 10-year-old wasn't there anymore. They'd taken her somewhere else before the raid. And no one has seen her since. A tear slid down her cheek. I don't know where she is. I don't even know if she's alive. But I know that if she is, she deserves more than just surviving. She deserves freedom, and love, and peace. Janelle finally looked out at the congregation. I'm telling this story not to scare you, but because God saved me, and I want to spend my life helping save others. I want to live for the ones who didn't make it. And I want to remind every person in this room that your pain doesn't get to define you. What they did to you doesn't get to win. Abby felt hot tears running down her face. Janelle handed the microphone back to the pastor, who stepped forward, voice gentle and reverent. Thank you, Janelle, for your bravery and for giving voice to those who no longer can. The church broke into quiet applause, many standing, many crying. Abby looked down at her lap. Something inside her had changed. Chapter 5. The car ride was quiet, apart from the soft hum of the engine and the rhythm of Abby's fingers drumming against her thigh. Her eyes stayed fixed on the window, watching the rows of buildings pass by like she was being driven to her own sentencing. You okay back there? Ethan asked, glancing at her through the rearview mirror. I guess, Abby mumbled. It just feels weird, starting over like this. Kelly turned in her seat, offering a warm smile. We're not asking you to commit to anything today. Just a meeting. You don't even have to dance. But what if she's weird? Abby said quickly. Or fake nice. Or worse, what if she says she sees potential, but really means I'm hopeless? Ethan chuckled. Wow, you've really covered the full doomsday spectrum. I just don't want this to be another waste of time. It won't be, Kelly said gently. And even if it is, we move on. No pressure. Abby took a breath, but it didn't calm the tightness in her chest. The car turned into a small, tidy lot nestled between a cafe and a flower shop. The sign above the glass door was minimal. Danielle's Studio, Private Dance and Movement Coaching. They parked. Here goes everything, Abby muttered. Inside, the air was cool and clean. The scent of lavender and polished wood greeted them as they stepped through the door. The walls were soft gray with white trim, and the studio space stretched wide beyond the lobby, a spotless mirror-lined room with glistening floors and natural light pouring in through large windows. Wow, Kelly said, impressed. This place is beautiful. Abby didn't speak, but she nodded. Her eyes scanned the room, wide and searching. It didn't feel like a high school gym or a stuffy recital hall. It felt calm, professional, like a place that deserved to be taken seriously. And then, from a hallway behind the studio, footsteps approached. Abby straightened, heart jumping into her throat. Danielle had arrived. A figure appeared in the doorway, short, poised, and effortlessly graceful. Danielle walked in with a confidence that was calm rather than intimidating. Her hair was tied back in a sleek bun, and she wore a simple black athletic set, no flashy logos, no pretentious energy. Up close, she looked even more striking. Her hair was a deep, almost ink-black shade pulled back into a smooth bun. Her skin was pale and clear, making her bright brown eyes stand out even more. Her lips were naturally full, giving her smile a soft, comforting effect. Years of dance had shaped her body into a perfect hourglass, strong thighs, sculpted hips, but nothing about her demeanor was showy. She carried herself with quiet confidence and an easy warmth. She smiled warmly. Hi there. You must be the Stricklands. I'm Danielle. Her voice was smooth, friendly, professional, but approachable. Kelly stepped forward first. Yes, I'm Kelly. This is my husband, Ethan. And this is our daughter, Abby. Danielle turned her attention to Abby, and her smile softened even more. Abby, it's so nice to meet you. Abby nodded politely, feeling strangely disarmed. She had imagined someone stiff, overly cheery, or fake. But Danielle's presence wasn't any of those things. There was a warmth about her, like a space heater in a cold room. She didn't seem like she was trying to impress anyone, just present. It's okay to be nervous, Danielle added gently. This is your space too. We move at your pace. Something in Abby's chest loosened just a little. Her mom gave her a small nudge. Go on, say hi. Hi, Abby said, her voice small but steady. Danielle smiled again, this time with something almost sisterly in her eyes. Hi back. Abby felt her feet steady under her. The weight of humiliation didn't vanish, but it lifted, even if only slightly. Meeting Danielle just standing in the same room as her felt like a happy ending to a horrible movie. Like someone had opened a window and let the stale air out. Whatever came next, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Danielle led them into a small sitting area off the main studio, cozy with a low coffee table and a pair of soft armchairs. She moved with the grace of someone who had danced her entire life, each step fluid and purposeful. So, she said, sitting across from them, tell me what brings you here. Ethan didn't hesitate. Honestly, our daughter's last dance teacher was full of it. Ethan, Kelly chided gently, though she couldn't help but agree. He shrugged. What? She was. Abby's been dancing since she was 6. Pushed herself harder than most adults I know. And this woman, Mrs. Lynch, kicked her off the team and said she was complacent. Which is complete nonsense. Danielle tilted her head, listening carefully. I'm sorry she had to go through that. She hasn't been the same since, Kelly added. She's lost so much confidence. We're just looking for someone who'll build her up instead of tear her down. Danielle turned to Abby, meeting her eyes with a calm sincerity. I promise you, I'm not that kind of teacher. Abby blinked. It wasn't just the words, it was the way Danielle said them. Like a vow. I care about progress, Danielle continued. About growth. But I don't believe in shaming someone to get there. If you trust me, I'll do everything I can to help you love dance again. Something flickered in Abby's expression, relief, maybe, or a tiny spark of hope. And Danielle smiled, the kind of smile that made you believe everything would be okay. They stepped out of the studio into the cool evening air, the sky tinged with the soft purple of approaching dusk. Abby was quiet, but her steps felt lighter than when they had arrived. As they reached the car, Ethan opened the passenger door for Abby, then glanced at Kelly with a small grin. She seems very nice, he said casually. Kelly raised an eyebrow, lips curving into a sarcastic smirk. Oh, very nice. And very beautiful. Ethan chuckled. Here we go. She's young, graceful, sweet, and did I mention stunning? Kelly continued, slipping into the driver's seat. Which is why I'll be doing all drop-offs and pickups from now on. Ethan looked at her like she just told him the moon was made of cheese. You're serious? Dead serious, she replied, buckling her seatbelt. You'd be way too obvious. He laughed, shaking his head with mock offense. Please. Like she'd have a chance. Kelly smirked. Exactly. They both laughed as Abby climbed into the back seat, finally cracking a smile at her parents' ridiculousness. The tension in the car broke, and for a brief moment, everything felt normal again. No pressure. No team. No rejection. Just her parents. And a strange new beginning. Chapter 6. The studio echoed with the sharp sounds of shoes against polished wood, the music pulsing through the mirrors as Mrs. Lynch stood with arms crossed, eyes scanning every move like a hawk. Keep it tight, ladies. You're not at a sleepover, this is rehearsal. The team moved in sync, their bodies flowing through the choreography. But something felt different without Abby. There was a hollow energy in the room, like the spine had been pulled from the team and replaced with someone who hadn't quite grown into her role yet. The new girl, Zoe, stood front left, trying her best to keep up. She was lean, graceful, and clearly talented, but still new. Still unsure. Mrs. Lynch's instructions were fast and sharp, her tone growing colder with every mistake. Arms higher, Zoe. Point those toes. And smile, for heaven's sake. Zoe forced a grin, but it looked shaky. The music shifted into the next sequence, one that involved a hip sway and drop-to-floor combo, a move Abby had once executed so confidently the others used to watch her for cues. As the team moved through it, Zoe hesitated. Her body went stiff, her expression faltered for just a second as she glanced around, clearly uncomfortable with the sensual tone of the routine. Mrs. Lynch clapped her hands. Well, you're not suggesting movement, you command it. Don't be shy. Zoe flushed, nodding quickly, trying again. But her shoulders were tense, her face pinched with embarrassment. A few of the other girls exchanged glances. They didn't say anything. Not yet. But one or two were beginning to see what Abby had once endured, how something about this space and this woman always demanded too much and gave too little in return. And none of them were quite sure how to say it. Meanwhile, across town, the atmosphere in Danielle's studio was completely different. The music was quiet, the lights warm, and the floor felt like it belonged to no one and everyone at once. Abby stood near the mirror, stretching, while Danielle sat cross-legged on the floor nearby, relaxed and attentive. "I don't want to jump into anything today," Danielle said gently. "Not choreography, not drills. I want to get to know you a little first, if that's okay." Abby hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, sure." Danielle smiled, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. "So, tell me about your old team." Abby stretched her leg behind her, keeping her gaze forward. "It was intense. A lot of routines, a lot of pressure, but I liked it. I liked being part of something." Danielle nodded. "Did you feel like you were growing there?" "I think so. I mean, I was learning, getting stronger. I always thought that's what growth looked like, working yourself past your limit every day until you couldn't anymore." "And your teacher?" Danielle asked softly, watching her reflection. "Mrs. Lynch, right?" Abby stopped stretching for a second, thinking hard. "She was strict." Danielle didn't respond right away. She waited. "I used to think that was normal," Abby said after a pause. "Like the yelling, the cold stares, the pressure to be perfect. I thought, maybe that's just how real dance training was. That you were supposed to leave practice feeling like you disappointed someone." Danielle's expression didn't shift, but her eyes were quietly studying Abby. "She never screamed at me," Abby went on. "Not really, but I always felt like I was one step away from losing her approval. Like if I blinked wrong I'd be benched. And then she did. She kicked me off the team." She looked down at her hands. "She said I wasn't hungry enough. But I was. I still am." Danielle stood and walked over to sit beside her on the floor. "You're not alone in thinking that's what discipline looks like. A lot of dancers grow up believing that pressure is the price of excellence." Abby gave a half shrug. "Maybe she wasn't that bad. Maybe I just couldn't keep up." "No," Danielle said gently but firmly. "You were trained to believe that someone else's behavior was your fault. It wasn't. And it never will be." Abby didn't say anything at first. But something about Danielle's voice, steady, nurturing, without judgment, made her feel like maybe she could believe it. She wasn't being told what to fix. She was just being seen. Danielle stood and stepped back, giving Abby space in the center of the studio. "Would you mind showing me a piece your last team worked on?" she asked kindly. "Anything you remember and feel comfortable with. I want to see what you've learned." Abby nodded, tying her hair into a quick bun and walking to her mark. She took a breath and let her body settle into the familiar rhythm. The music in her head started playing as she moved, muscle memory taking over. Her turns were tight, her arms extended with confidence. Every step was clean and deliberate. Even alone, with no music and no team beside her, she danced like she belonged on a stage. She hit the timing perfectly, her lines elegant, transitions smooth. It was clear she had been trained well and had practiced endlessly. Danielle watched carefully, nodding with quiet appreciation. But then, about 3/4 through the routine, Abby hit a move that made Danielle's expression shift. Just slightly. A split-second flash of discomfort in her eyes as Abby executed a move that, while technically popular, was jarringly sensual, especially for a 14-year-old. Abby didn't notice. She finished the routine with a clean finish, breathing a little heavier, face flushed with effort. "That's about all I remember," she said shyly. Abby stood catching her breath, her arms still loose at her sides. She looked over at Danielle, a little uncertain but hoping for approval. "That was really great," Danielle said with a warm smile, her hands coming together in a soft clap. "You moved with purpose. You didn't rush. You connected with your body in a way that shows maturity and discipline. I'm impressed." Abby's shoulders relaxed. A shy smile crept across her face. "Really? Really?" Danielle said, but then her smile softened further and her tone took on a more thoughtful edge. "Can I ask you something, though?" Abby nodded, her smile fading just a little. "Where were your hands during that last part?" The question wasn't judgmental. Danielle's voice was calm and open. But the shift in Abby's posture was immediate. Her shoulders dipped slightly, her gaze dropped to the floor. "That was the last routine Mrs. Lynch taught us before she cut me," she said quietly. Danielle gave a gentle nod. "I figured." Abby's voice was barely a whisper now. "I felt weird doing it, but everyone else did it and no one said anything." Danielle stepped closer but still gave her space. "Let me tell you something, Abby. If you don't need to use the bathroom, and if no one hurt you there, Then you don't ever need to put your hands down there. Not in public. Not in performance. Not in front of people. Abby looked up, her eyes wide with a mixture of surprise and understanding. No one had ever said it that plainly before. No one had given her permission to feel weird about it. You can express strength, beauty, and confidence, Danielle continued, without inviting the wrong kind of eyes. You can look powerful. You can even look cool. Or elegant. Or bold. But you never ever need to look like bait for creepy old perverts just to prove you can dance. Abby's face twisted with a small laugh. That's exactly what it felt like. Like I was trying to impress someone I didn't even want looking at me. Danielle smiled again, proud this time. Then trust that feeling. That gut instinct. That's your body's way of telling you something's off. And it's okay to listen to it. You're allowed to set the standard for how you present yourself to the world. I'm really glad you said that, Abby said, her voice steadier now. I didn't know how to talk about it. I thought I was just being dramatic or immature. You weren't, Danielle said. You were being wise. Wiser than the adult who choreographed that mess. You don't need to be sexy to be stunning. You don't need to shock people to move them. Abby nodded slowly, a sense of validation blooming in her chest. Thanks. Danielle tilted her head. We're going to work together to make you the best dancer you can be. But we're also going to protect the person you are. Deal? Abby smiled, this time with her whole heart. Deal. Abby practically skipped out the front doors of the studio, her face glowing in a way Kelly hadn't seen in days, maybe longer. She swung the car door open and slid into the passenger seat with a grin that couldn't be contained. Well? Kelly asked, already smiling as she put the car in drive. It was amazing, Abby breathed. Mom, like actually amazing. Kelly glanced at her, surprised by the sudden burst of life in her daughter's voice. Yeah. She didn't judge me. She didn't bark at me. She actually watched me. And listened. And she was so nice. Like, not fake nice. Just real. Kelly's shoulders relaxed as she merged into traffic. That's incredible, honey. I'm so glad. And she didn't make me do anything weird, Abby continued. In fact, she called out one of the moves from my old routine, like in a good way. She explained how I can be a powerful dancer without, making it gross. Kelly let out a soft laugh. Well, sounds like she gave you more than just a dance lesson. She did, Abby said, beaming. It just felt different. Like, this might be where I belong. Kelly's eyes flicked over to her daughter again, and for the first time in a while, Abby didn't look weighed down by something invisible. She looked free. I'm proud of you for going, Kelly said gently. Even though you were nervous. Abby shrugged with a playful smile. Okay, I was terrified. They both laughed, and for the rest of the ride, the car was filled with excited chatter about stretches, routines, the way Danielle talked, the way she didn't talk, and how the studio smelled weirdly fancy. For the first time in what felt like ages, things were starting to feel right again. Chapter 7. They pulled into the driveway just as the porch light clicked on. Inside, the warm yellow glow from the kitchen spilled out into the hallway. Ethan was leaning against the counter with a mug in his hand when the door opened. Well? He asked, eyebrows raised as Abby walked in with a bounce in her step. Abby dropped her dance bag by the door and grinned. It was awesome. Ethan straightened. Yeah. She's so cool, Dad. He actually listened to me. She didn't make me feel small or wrong. She just... He got it. And she's smart and calm, and I already like her way more than... She stopped, shaking her head. Than anyone I've danced with before. Kelly smiled and slipped off her shoes. It was like night and day. You should have seen her face when she came out. Ethan crossed the room and rested a hand on Abby's shoulder. That's what I like to hear. You deserve to feel good about dancing again. I do, Abby said. I really do. He gave her a proud smile. Sounds like we found the right teacher. Yeah, Abby said softly. I think we did. And for the first time in a long while, the Strickland house felt lighter, like something broken had started to mend. Later that night, the house had gone quiet. The dishes were done, the lights dimmed, and Kelly had already gone off to bed. Ethan lingered in Abby's doorway, arms crossed, watching her pull the covers up to her chin. You settled in okay? He asked. Abby nodded, a tired smile on her face. Yeah. Still thinking about the studio. I can tell, he chuckled. You've been glowing since you walked through the door. He stepped into the room and sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a few loose strands of hair off her forehead. I just wanted to say, he added quietly, I'm proud of you, kiddo. You could have given up, but you didn't. You faced something new and you did it with grace. Abby looked up at him for a moment, her smile fading into something softer. Can I ask you something? Of course, he said, his tone warm and open. She hesitated. When Mom said she wanted to adopt me, did you want that? Did you want me? The question hit Ethan like a gentle, unexpected punch to the chest. His breath caught for a second before he found his voice. Honestly, he said, eyes locked with hers. At first I wasn't sure. I was scared. I thought, what if I mess it up? What if I can't love a child who didn't come from me? Abby blinked, holding his gaze. But when I finally said yes, he continued, his voice thickening, and I saw you for the first time, this tiny, brave, unbelievably bright little girl, I felt like the biggest fool for ever hesitating. Because it took me exactly 5 seconds to fall in love with you. Abby's lip quivered just a little. She sat up, threw her arms around him and hugged him tight. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for being a good family. Ethan held her close, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. No problem, baby girl. They stayed there like that for a long time, father and daughter wrapped in a bond that no biology could define or limit. And for Abby it felt like home. Chapter 8. The hallways buzzed with chatter and slamming lockers as the first bell rang. Abby walked toward her homeroom, her books hugged against her chest, but her face lighter than it had been in weeks. Abby. Kendra's voice cut through the noise. She turned just in time to see both Kendra and Layla jogging up beside her, wide grins already plastered on their faces. So, Layla blurted, barely letting her get a word out. How was it? Tell us everything, Kendra added. Is she a monster? Is she better than the Hag Queen? Abby laughed. She's not a monster. She's actually amazing. Layla raised her eyebrows. Amazing how? I don't even know where to start, Abby said, her voice picking up with excitement. She's young, like not even 20, but she's super confident and calm. And she actually listens. I didn't feel judged or pushed or anything. Wait, Kendra said. You mean she didn't tell you to tighten your core until you cried? Nope, Abby said with a grin. She actually complimented me. Said I had great control and movement. Layla faked a gasp. What is this sorcery? And, Abby added, lowering her voice a little, she even pointed out a move that made me uncomfortable and told me I never had to do it again. Kendra blinked. Wait, what? You know that one routine Mrs. Lynch gave us with the grabbing the crotch? Both girls cringed. Oh, that one, Layla groaned. Yeah, that was not okay. Well, Danielle, my new teacher, she noticed it immediately and told me straight up that I never have to make myself look like that to be powerful. She said I can look beautiful and strong without making creeps stare. Both girls went quiet for a second, and then Kendra bumped her shoulder with a grin. Okay, I like her already. Layla nodded. If she opens a full-time studio, we're transferring. Abby laughed, and the three of them turned the corner together, the conversation drifting into more chatter about music teachers and how different things suddenly felt. For the first time in a long while, Abby didn't feel like an outsider at school or on the dance floor. She felt like she was becoming herself again. Later that afternoon, the studio was filled with soft background music and the occasional sound of shoes sliding across the floor. Abby and Danielle were taking a short break, sitting on the edge of the mirror wall, sipping from water bottles and catching their breath between sets. So, Danielle said with a teasing smile, what was your old team really like? I know you've given me the PG version. Abby smirked. Oh, you want the real tea? I want it all. Abby laughed. Hey, so there was this one girl, Donna Suni. Danielle tilted her head. That name sounds made up. Oh no, she's very real, Abby said, rolling her eyes. She was like the slowest, most half-hearted dancer on the entire team. She moved like her limbs had separate time zones. Danielle burst out laughing. Separate time zones. I swear. And the worst part. Abby leaned in. Mrs. Lynch never said a word to her. Not once. But I got blamed for the group not being tight. Me. Danielle's eyes widened with mock offense. Wait. So you're telling me you were basically doing CPR on that formation and you got in trouble? Every time, Abby groaned, tossing her head back. Lynch would just stand there with her arms folded like, Abby, you need to lead better. Meanwhile, Donna's over there blinking at the wrong mirror. Danielle laughed so hard she had to put her water down. Oh no. Stop, I'm gonna choke. Abby laughed with her, a real, belly-deep laugh that she hadn't let out in what felt like ages. She probably got a ribbon for most enthusiastic snail, Danielle teased. She would have shown up late to accept it, Abby shot back. They both collapsed into another round of giggles. The moment was light, genuine, and healing. For Abby, it was more than just venting, it was reclaiming her story. Finally saying out loud what had been weighing her down and realizing she wasn't crazy or alone for feeling it. Danielle smiled, catching her breath. I'm really glad you're here. Abby looked up at her, cheeks flushed but eyes bright. Me too. Danielle stood up, brushing off her hands, her playful smile still lingering. You know what, Abby? After a few weeks working with me, those girls from your old team, they're gonna look like kindergartners trying to keep up. Abby's eyes lit up. Seriously? Danielle nodded confidently. We're not just going to bring your skills back. We're going to rebuild them stronger, cleaner, and more powerful than ever. Abby jumped to her feet, her energy renewed. Okay, let's go then. The music started low in the background as Danielle guided her through a warm-up routine, focusing on posture, core control, and fluid transitions. It wasn't like the rush drills she was used to. Every move Danielle taught had purpose, building into the next with care and clarity. They transitioned into turns, jumps, and combinations, each more challenging than the last, but Danielle's teaching style made it feel achievable. Abby wasn't just learning, she was unlocking something. Then came flexibility. Danielle stepped forward and dropped into a full split like it was nothing. She leaned back, arms extended, her spine arching in a perfect fluid curve. In seconds, she had folded herself in half backward, her head nearly touching her heels. Abby's jaw dropped. You're not even real. Danielle laughed. I get that a lot. How did you even learn to do that? Years of practice, she said, rising back up without even using her hands. And a lot of pain at first. But trust me, it's totally learnable. Abby watched, fascinated, as Danielle walked her through the steps, beginning with back bends and safe stretches to build spine flexibility. Danielle never rushed her, only pushed just far enough to stretch limits, not break them. You've got the potential, Danielle said, gently pressing Abby's shoulder into a deeper stretch. We'll get you there. Maybe not overnight, but sooner than you think. Abby, still stunned at her teacher's rubber band abilities, nodded. If I can even do half of what you just did, I'll feel like a superhero. Danielle grinned. You're a superhero. You just haven't realized it yet. And with that, they continued, sweat, effort, laughter, and progress filling the room. Abby wasn't just growing as a dancer. She was starting to believe in herself again. Chapter 9. It had only been a few weeks, but to Abby, it felt like she was becoming a completely different dancer in person. Her posture was stronger. Her movements were sharper. Her flexibility had improved so fast it almost scared her. Moves that once felt impossible were now second nature, and routines that used to drain her now made her feel powerful. Danielle pushed her, but never cruelly. She corrected without shaming, encouraged without babying, and the results were undeniable. Even her friends noticed it at school. You're literally glowing, Layla said one day. Like, are you eating glitter or something? But Abby knew the truth. She was finally dancing in an environment where she was allowed to succeed without fear. And the best part? She was already freakishly better than she ever had been under Mrs. Lynch. The difference was shocking. With Danielle's guidance, Abby had gone from a skilled team player to something much more, an emerging soloist with grace, strength, and precision. She wasn't just keeping up with others anymore. She was standing out. Danielle had even started hinting at something bigger. If you keep going like this, she said one day, you'll be ready to compete again. On your own terms. Abby's heart had practically exploded at those words. She still hadn't told her old teammates. She didn't feel the need. Let them have their cold practices and hollow routines. She had found something real, something that wasn't just about performance. It was about becoming who she was meant to be. And with Danielle in her corner, that journey was only just beginning. Chapter 10. A few weeks had passed and Abby was excited for the upcoming competition. The scent of baked chicken and seasoned vegetables filled the kitchen as the Stricklands sat around the dinner table, forks clinking gently against their plates. Abby, usually quiet during meals, was practically vibrating with energy. There's a competition coming up just a few days away, she said through a mouthful of mashed potatoes. Danielle says I'm more than ready. Like not just ready. Ready. Ethan smiled, slicing into his food. I've never seen you this confident before. It's because of her, Abby said immediately. She's not just a good teacher, she's like Like a big sister or something? Kelly looked up, intrigued. A big sister? Yeah. She listens to me. She hears me. Not just about dance but about school life, whatever's on my mind. She asks questions. She gives actual advice. She treats me like a real person. That's wonderful, sweetheart, Kelly said warmly. I'm really glad we found a teacher for you who makes you feel that way. She reminds me of you too, Abby said, her eyes soft. The way you talk to me. Not like I'm a kid who needs to be managed, but like I matter. Ethan looked touched. Well, you do matter. Abby grinned. Exactly. And Danielle makes me feel that way too. He paused, then straightened up a little. Can we invite her over for dinner sometime? I think you'd really like her. I want you to really know her like I do. Kelly and Ethan exchanged a quick glance. There was no hesitation, just the shared look of two parents appreciating how much someone had impacted their child's life. Of course we can, Kelly said. We'd love to meet the woman who brought your fire back. Absolutely, Ethan added. Any night she's free, she's welcome here. Abby beamed and popped another bite into her mouth, already imagining the evening. Her family and Danielle together at the same table. Laughing, sharing stories, maybe even planning future routines together. Everything felt like it was finally falling into place. Chapter 11. The next afternoon, the studio buzzed with soft music and the rhythmic sound of feet sliding and tapping against the floor. Abby had just finished running through a difficult combo, her cheeks flushed and her heart racing from the effort. Danielle stood off to the side, giving her a thumbs up. You're killing it today, she said. I'm serious. That spin was flawless. Abby smiled, catching her breath. Thanks. It finally stopped trying to throw me across the room. Danielle laughed and turned toward the front desk just as the bell above the door gave its usual little chime. Abby stepped over to her water bottle and happened to glance up, just in time to see a man walking briskly out the front entrance. He was the dad of one of Danielle's younger students. She'd seen him once or twice during pickup. There was something off about him now, though. His smile was too wide, stretched like plastic, and his eyes were darting like he'd stolen something. As he reached the door, he stuffed something small and pink into the pocket of his jacket. Abby's brow furrowed. Was that? She blinked, unsure if she saw it right. The door shut behind him, the bell chiming again as he disappeared into the parking lot. Everything okay? Danielle asked, noticing Abby's expression. Yeah. Just thought I saw something weird, Abby said slowly. Danielle didn't press. She just gave her a reassuring nod. Weird is practically a given around here. Abby smiled faintly, but her mind still lingered on the moment. The pink fabric. The creepy grin. It was probably nothing. But something about it didn't sit right. The music started again and the two of them returned to the center of the studio floor. Danielle demonstrated the beginning of a new routine, fluid, powerful movements that demanded both strength and grace. Abby followed along, picking up quickly as always. Her body moved with purpose, the choreography already imprinting itself in her memory. They paused for water halfway through, catching their breath. Hey, Abby said between sips, I forgot to ask yesterday. Are you free for dinner this weekend? Danielle raised an eyebrow. Dinner? Yeah, Abby said with a hopeful smile. At my house. With my parents. I told them how amazing you are and they really want to get to know you more. You've become a huge part of my life and I just think it'd be nice. Danielle blinked, visibly caught off guard. For a moment she didn't speak. Then slowly her face softened into something tender, almost fragile. Wow, that's really sweet of you. Well, Abby said quickly, you matter to me. You've helped me so much and it's only been a few weeks. My parents want to thank you and honestly, I want them to really know the person who helped me feel like myself again. Danielle looked down for a second, composing herself, then gave Abby a quiet, grateful smile. I'd be honored. Abby grinned. Awesome. I'll let my mom know. She'll probably go overboard cooking, but hey, bonus for you. They laughed and the music resumed. But as they danced, Abby couldn't help but notice a flicker of emotion in Danielle's eyes. It wasn't just surprise. It was something deeper. Like being invited to someone's table meant more to her than anyone could imagine. Chapter 12. The Strickland dining room had never looked so welcoming. A candle flickered gently in the center of the table, casting a soft glow over the warm spread of roasted vegetables, glazed chicken and homemade rolls. Kelly had outdone herself and Ethan had proudly set the table, grinning like it was Thanksgiving. Abby was practically bouncing with excitement, checking the window every 30 seconds. When the doorbell finally rang, she darted over before her parents could even stand. Danielle stood on the porch in a casual dress and jacket, her dark hair loose for once, cascading over her shoulders. She looked elegant but not overdone, her presence still somehow disarming and comforting. "Hi," Abby said, opening the door wide. "Hey," Danielle smiled. "Something smells amazing. Get in here before my mom panics thinking you're not coming." Danielle laughed and stepped inside, handing over a small bouquet of wildflowers. "For the chef." Kelly smiled as she came around the corner. "Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you." "Just a little thank you for the invite." Ethan followed with a firm handshake and a warm grin. "So you're the woman who made my kid fall back in love with dancing." "Guilty," Danielle said with a playful shrug. Once seated at the table, conversation flowed easily at first, music, movies, harmless jokes about Ethan's inability to cook anything other than eggs. But then came the real questions. "So," Kelly said, topping off Danielle's drink, "where are you from originally?" Danielle paused just for a breath. "A little outside of town. Not too far, really." "Still local?" Ethan asked. "For the most part." Abby didn't notice anything odd, but Kelly raised an eyebrow, but decided not to push yet. "What made you want to dance?" Abby asked, hoping to steer the conversation to something Danielle would enjoy. Danielle relaxed slightly. "It was always kind of my escape. I had a lot of energy as a kid and not a lot of places to put it. My first studio was kind of a mess, but it taught me how much I needed to move. Dance became the one thing that made me feel like I had control over something." Abby nodded, understanding that deeply. "That makes sense," Kelly said. "And the studio you own now, you've had it how long?" 7 months. "And you're only 18? Ethan asked, incredulous. Danielle nodded, sipping her water. "That's impressive," he said honestly. "I know adults twice your age who couldn't run a lemonade stand." Danielle laughed softly. "Thanks. It hasn't been easy, but it's been worth it." Then Kelly, smiling but sharp, leaned in slightly. "So tell me, Danielle, how does someone not even out of their teens yet manage to teach better than a woman who's been at it for over a decade?" Danielle burst out laughing at that. "Oh wow, you're really going there." Ethan chuckled. "We say it with love. But also, seriously, how?" Danielle gave a lopsided grin. "Let's just say, being older doesn't always mean being better. Sometimes it just means someone's had more time to stop caring." That earned a nod of agreement from Ethan. "But really," she continued, her tone softening, "I just try to pay attention. People don't need to be pushed to the breaking point to grow. They just need someone to believe in them." Abby smiled so hard her cheeks hurt. "See why I wanted you to meet her?" As dinner went on, Danielle asked about Ethan's job and Kelly's work at the school. They talked about Abby's childhood stories, her first recital, and her infamous slip on stage that made her swear off cartwheels for 2 years. Danielle laughed easily, her responses always thoughtful, but whenever a question touched too close to her past, she skillfully sidestepped it. "Did you grow up around here?" Ethan asked at one point. "Sort of," she answered vaguely, stabbing at her vegetables. "Any family nearby?" Kelly tried. Danielle took a sip of her drink. "No one I talk to." That answer silenced the table for a beat. Kelly and Ethan exchanged a glance, but before they could respond, Danielle quickly smiled and said, "But that's okay. Some people find family in other ways." Abby reached under the table and gave her hand a squeeze. Danielle looked over at her and the smile turned real again. After dessert, they moved into the living room, and Abby pulled out her routine music to show off a bit of what they'd been working on. Danielle helped guide her through a few stretches and even showed Kelly and Ethan a hilarious mini-routine they could try, causing Ethan to nearly topple over trying to mimic a spin. Laughter filled the house. Whatever clouds Danielle had walked in with seemed to fade for a while. In that moment she looked at home, welcomed, wanted. But when the night ended and she stepped out onto the porch, her smile faltered just for a breath. Ethan and Kelly waved as she walked toward her car. Abby leaned against the doorframe, watching. "Thanks again," Danielle said, voice warm but distant. "Come over again sometime," Kelly called. Danielle nodded. "I'd like that." But as she got into her car, her hands gripped the steering wheel just a little too tight. Because no matter how perfect the night had been, this was still borrowed peace. And peace for Danielle was always temporary. The night air was cool as Danielle drove down the dark, winding road back toward her studio. The trees blurred past under the soft glow of street lamps, and the faint hum of the car engine was the only sound in the quiet cabin. Her smile had long faded. She reached over and tapped the screen on her dashboard. The phone icon lit up. After a few rings, a man's voice answered, slightly groggy and surprised. "Hello. It's Danielle," she said calmly, her voice low and steady. "Oh hey, everything okay? I need you to meet me at the studio," she said, eyes still on the road. "Now." There was a pause. "At this hour?" "It's about your daughter," she added carefully. "It's important." The line was quiet for a moment. "Is she okay?" "She's fine," Danielle said. "But we need to talk. Privately." Another pause. Then, "I'll be there in 15. She ended the call without saying goodbye. Danielle stared ahead, her face unreadable. Whatever this meeting was about, it wasn't just business. And it definitely wasn't just dance. Chapter 13. The studio was dark when he arrived, the only lights spilling from the small lobby where Danielle stood waiting. She wore all black leggings and a fitted top, and her hair was tied back in a tight braid. Her expression was calm, not angry, not smiling, just unreadable. He stepped in trying to act casual. "Hey, you said this was about my daughter." Danielle gestured to a chair set in the middle of the main studio floor. A TV screen on a rolling stand was positioned in front of it, waiting. "Have a seat," she said evenly. "This won't take long." He hesitated, suddenly unsure. But he sat. Danielle clicked a remote and the TV screen came to life. Grainy footage appeared, surveillance camera quality, slightly angled from above. A familiar studio hallway. She began to speak as the footage started rolling. "I've been reviewing my students' progress," she said. "Rachel started out strong, graceful, confident. But lately there's been a clear decline. She's distracted, unfocused." On the screen, a man walked into the frame. The timestamp was from a few days ago. He looked around nervously before stepping into a side room. "She's not connecting to the routines," Danielle continued. "Which tells me something at home might be affecting her." On the screen, he was now visible rummaging through a laundry basket. He pulled something out, something pink and lacy. Himself on camera, standing there holding a pair of Danielle's panties. She kept talking as if nothing unusual were happening. Her voice remained smooth, composed, almost businesslike. "With this drop in focus," she said, "comes a need for more personalized instruction. More attention. Which means higher costs." On the screen, he was now pressing the fabric to his face. Smelling it. Eyes closed, disgustingly slow and deliberate. "I've updated my rates for select students who require additional support. For Rachel," she said, finally pausing as she turned to face him, "that means $1,000 per month." His face had gone ghost white. He stared at the screen, frozen, not daring to speak. The video looped back to the beginning. Danielle walked toward him slowly, her steps precise. "Of course," she said softly, "I understand that might be difficult for some parents." She stopped behind him, leaned in close. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "If you ever steal from me again, I will send this video to everyone you know." She let that sit there like a blade balanced on his shoulder. He didn't say a word. Couldn't. His hands were trembling, his face pale and clammy. Danielle stood upright and calmly clicked the TV off. "Now," she said with unsettling grace, "get out." He shot up from the chair like it had burned him and hurried toward the exit without a single glance back. The door slammed shut behind him. Danielle stood in silence for a moment, staring at the blank TV screen. Then she picked up the remote, turned off the power completely, and walked back into her office, her face as composed as ever. Nothing rattled her. Not anymore. Chapter 14. It was late afternoon when the Stricklands received the message. Danielle wanted to speak with all three of them at the studio. There was no hint of concern in her tone, but even so, Kelly couldn't help but feel a strange flutter in her chest as they pulled into the parking lot. Abby, on the other hand, was excited, chatting nonstop about the new techniques they'd been working on and how Danielle said she was getting close to competition ready. Inside, Danielle greeted them in the lobby with her usual warm smile, dressed in a soft gray sweater and leggings, her long dark hair tied loosely behind her. She looked more casual than usual, relaxed. Almost glowing. "Thank you for coming," she said as she waved them in. They followed her into the office just off the studio floor. A few papers and files were neatly arranged on her desk, along with a bottle of water and a small pink notebook. Danielle sat on the edge of the desk, her hands folded in her lap. I just wanted to talk for a moment about Abby, she began, glancing at the teen with a proud smile. She's been doing absolutely phenomenal. Her focus, her energy, her work ethic. It's rare. And it's not just talent, she puts in the work. Abby flushed slightly and looked down, smiling. She hasn't wasted a single second of my time, Danielle continued. And because of that, I want to lower your tuition. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Lower it? Yes, Danielle said. To $50. Kelly blinked. Per hour. Danielle smiled. Per month. Silence. Ethan actually leaned forward in his seat, thinking he must have misheard. You mean $50 per month? That's right. Kelly sat back, stunned. Danielle. We can't do that. You have bills, rent, groceries, you can't just... I insist, Danielle said, her voice gentle but firm. She's worth it. I've worked with dancers for years and students like Abby are 1 in 1,000. It's not about the money. It's about the joy of working with someone who respects what I teach. The room was quiet for a moment. Abby looked at her parents, clearly hoping they wouldn't argue. Ethan finally nodded, slowly. You're sure? Danielle's bright brown eyes lit up. Positive. It's no problem. Kelly stood and walked over to her, arms open. Then thank you. Really? Danielle returned the hug without hesitation. Of course. Ethan joined in with a firm handshake that turned into a hug, and Abby wrapped her arms around Danielle last, beaming. As they walked out to the car, they were still talking about it, marveling at the generosity. But back in the studio, Danielle stood alone for a moment, watching them through the glass as they drove away. The smile stayed on her face. The next day at school, Abby was heading to her locker when she heard someone call her name. She turned to see Madison, one of her former dance teammates, walking toward her with an uneasy look on her face. Abby hadn't spoken to any of the girls from the team since she'd been cut. Most of them had stayed quiet, whether out of awkwardness or loyalty to Mrs. Lynch, she wasn't sure. So seeing Madison now, arms folded nervously across her chest, caught her completely off guard. Hey, Madison said. Do you have a second? Abby closed her locker, keeping her expression neutral. Yeah. What's up? Madison hesitated, then sighed. I wanted to say I'm sorry about what happened with Mrs. Lynch. Abby's brows lifted slightly, she hadn't expected that. I didn't have anything to do with it, Madison added quickly. None of us did. She just made the decision and told us it was final. We weren't even allowed to ask questions. Abby nodded slowly. I figured. I always thought it was messed up, Madison continued. You were the strongest dancer on the team, and then she just cut you. It didn't make any sense. Abby looked at her for a moment, then gave a small smile. It's okay, really. I was hurt, but it led me to something better. Madison looked relieved. Good. I just didn't want you to think we all turned on you. I didn't, Abby said honestly. Thanks for saying something, though. Madison smiled. I'm glad you're still dancing. I am, Abby said, her smile growing. Better than ever, actually. They exchanged a small wave as Madison walked off down the hallway. It wasn't a huge moment, but it mattered. Abby stood for a second, thinking about how different she felt now, stronger, freer, like she didn't need anyone's approval to keep moving forward. And she had Danielle to thank for that. Later that day, Abby met up with Kendra and Layla at their usual spot by the benches near the gym. Lunch had barely started when she dropped the news. You guys are not going to believe what Danielle did, Abby said, eyes gleaming with excitement. Oh no, Kendra grinned. She taught you how to levitate. Better, Abby said. She dropped my tuition to $50. Both girls blinked. Layla tilted her head. Per week. Per month. Their jaws dropped in unison. You're lying, Kendra said, leaning in. I swear. She called my parents in yesterday to talk about my progress, and then she just out of nowhere said she wanted to lower the price. Who does that? Layla asked, amazed. That's like unheard of. Exactly, Abby said, beaming. She said I haven't wasted a single second of her time. That I've been one of the most focused students she's ever had. Kendra clapped her hands together. Okay, Danielle is officially the best human alive. She really is, Abby said. And I feel bad, like she could be charging way more, but she was so firm about it. She wanted to do it. Layla grinned. Honestly, you deserve it. You went through so much garbage with that hack Lynch. It's about time something amazing happened for you. I still can't believe it, Abby said, tucking her hair behind her ear. I just feel lucky, like I ended up exactly where I'm supposed to be. Kendra smiled. Sometimes good people do win. Layla leaned back. And next time you're performing on TV or winning some national competition, we're going to be in the front row like, that's our girl. They laughed together, and for the rest of lunch, Abby felt lighter than she had in a long time. Not because things were easy, but because they were hers now. Earned, cherished. And she knew she was only getting started. Chapter 15. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Music echoed faintly from behind the stage curtains, sneakers squeaked across polished gym floors, and dancers in matching uniforms stretched and whispered encouragements. This was it, the day Abby had been preparing for. The regional competition. She stood near the back hallway, her number pinned to her hip, her costume simple but elegant. Her palms were clammy, her heart racing in her chest. From across the floor she spotted them. Mrs. Lynch, in her usual icy black blazer, stood stiffly with her arms crossed. Her team hovered behind her in perfect rows, each one glancing around with robotic smiles and tense shoulders. A few of them noticed Abby. One gave her a small wave. Another looked away, ashamed. Mrs. Lynch didn't seem to notice her at all. Abby took a step back instinctively. Danielle appeared behind her, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. You ready? Abby shook her head. Not even close. Danielle leaned down, her voice soft but steady. You've trained, you've pushed, and you belong here more than anyone in this building. Abby looked up at her. What if I mess up? Danielle smiled. Then you mess up, and you still keep going. That's what makes you a dancer, not perfection. Abby took a deep breath, slowly calming herself. Danielle gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze, then suddenly paused, her eyes catching something on Abby's wrist. A small woven bracelet, faded pink and blue thread, a little frayed at the edges. Not expensive, not stylish, but undeniably cherished. She stared at it, her smile faltering for just a second. Where'd you get that? Danielle asked, her voice unusually quiet. Abby glanced down. Oh, I've had it forever. Since I was like 5 or 6. My parents gave it to me. My grandma made it when she was a kid and told my dad to hand it down to his firstborn. So I guess adopting was just the same. Danielle didn't respond right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on it. Why? Abby asked. Danielle blinked, her expression unreadable. No reason. She looked away and forced a smile. It suits you. But as Abby turned toward the stage to prepare, Danielle remained still, her heart fluttering, her thoughts suddenly somewhere far away. Go show them who you are, she said. The lights dimmed and the announcer's voice rang out through the auditorium speakers. Next up from Silver Creek High, please welcome the Velocity Dance team. Abby stepped aside backstage, watching from the curtain with her heart in her throat. Danielle stood quietly beside her, her eyes already narrowing as the familiar black and red costumes took the stage. The music hit with a heavy, thudding bass, and the girls from Mrs. Lynch's team began their routine, sharp, aggressive movements with edgy, exaggerated motions that had no business being part of a high school competition. Some of the families in the crowd clapped politely at first. A few parents leaned forward, unsure how to react. Others shared tight-lipped glances and awkward half-smiles. A couple of moms shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their eyes narrowing with every beat of the music. By the second verse, the routine only got worse. Highly inappropriate moves that were clearly choreographed for shock value. The outfits didn't help. Flashy and overly revealing, occasional creepy perverts out in the crowd glaring, smirking like a dog looking at a steak. Abby swallowed hard. This is exactly the routine she wanted me to do. Danielle crossed her arms, her jaw clenched. And she made you feel like you were the problem. The music ended with a final snap, one last provocative pose for more shock. And then came the applause. Loud, enthusiastic, forced. Some audience members clapped because they had to. Some parents looked confused, unsure what the standard was anymore. And some teens cheered just because the moves were bold. But beneath the surface, it was clear. Not everyone was impressed. Not everyone was comfortable. But no one dared say anything. Mrs. Lynch stood off stage with a satisfied smirk, nodding like she had just directed a Broadway masterpiece. Abby looked down at her own outfit, clean, elegant, appropriate. And for a moment she wondered how the judges would respond to real art instead of manufactured vulgarity. Danielle gently rested a hand on her back. "Let them cheer," she said quietly. "You're going to move them." The announcer's voice echoed through the auditorium again, calm and composed. "And now, performing solo representing Stomp Beat Studio. Please welcome Abby Strickland." Abby stood just behind the curtain, her heart pounding like a war drum in her chest. Her hands were cold and her breath felt thin, like she couldn't quite get enough air. Danielle crouched beside her, placing both hands gently on her shoulders. "Hey," she whispered, her voice low and grounding. "You got this." Abby looked at her, searching her eyes. "Just remember everything I taught you. This is your story now. Go tell it." Abby nodded, barely able to speak. She stepped forward and the curtain slowly drew back. The stage lights hit her like a wave, but she kept her chin high. The music began, soft piano notes, slow and graceful. Her first few movements flowed like water, every step rooted in ballet fundamentals that she had refined over the past few weeks. Then the beat shifted, more upbeat with a pulse of pop rhythm. Her body responded, moving in perfect sync with the tempo, light and energetic, the crowd already leaning forward with interest. Every turn, every leap, every shift of weight was seamless. She blended the delicacy of ballet with the flair of contemporary pop, spinning, kicking, gliding across the stage with intention and fire. And just when the audience thought they had seen it all, boom. The music dropped into a bass-heavy hip-hop rhythm. Abby didn't just dance it, she commanded it. Her body hit sharp angles, smooth isolations, clean pops. She had total control, moving with power and confidence while keeping it respectful, tasteful hers. Every transition was intentional. Every expression on her face was real. She wasn't dancing for approval, she was dancing because it felt like truth. By the time the routine ended and the music faded into silence, there was a moment, just 1 second, where the crowd held its breath. Then the room exploded. Cheers erupted, applause thundered. The standing ovations spread like fire through the seats. Even a few parents from Mrs. Lynch's team stood clapping, moved by what they had just seen. Abby stood center stage, breathing hard, her face flushed but beaming. Backstage, Danielle was smiling, a hand over her heart, tears quietly pooling in her eyes. Abby had done more than outperform the other team. She had told a story. And she had won something far more valuable than any trophy. Respect. The auditorium hushed again as the announcer returned to the stage, envelope in hand. The judges, seated at their long table, whispered amongst themselves before settling back, their faces unreadable. "And now," the announcer said, voice steady, "the moment you've all been waiting for." Abby stood backstage, still catching her breath, her heart pounding again, this time for a different reason. Danielle stood beside her, one arm around her shoulders. Ethan and Kelly had rushed to the side entrance to be close for the results, their faces glowing with pride. In first place, by unanimous decision from all 3 judges, and with the highest score of the entire event. The crowd leaned in. Abby Strickland. The room exploded. Cheers, claps, even whistles echoed from every corner of the auditorium. A few of the dancers from the other teams turned to look at each other in surprise, but none of them looked angry. They knew that she'd earned it. Abby's mouth fell open. She didn't move until Danielle gave her a gentle push. "Go." Abby ran out to center stage, nearly tripping on her way, eyes wide and hands shaking. The medal was placed around her neck, the announcer smiling as he raised her hand in victory. Flashbulbs popped from a dozen phones and cameras. Backstage, Ethan grabbed Kelly and hugged her tightly. "She did it," he shouted. Danielle smiled from the side, her arms crossed, eyes wet with pride. Later in the parking lot, the 4 of them regrouped, Ethan, Kelly, Abby and Danielle still buzzing with excitement. "I still can't believe it," Abby said, holding the trophy in both hands like it was made of diamonds. "I actually won." "By a landslide," Ethan reminded her. "Don't forget that part." "We are so proud of you," Kelly said, pulling her into a hug. Then she turned to Danielle and hugged her too. "And you didn't just teach her. You believed in her when nobody else did." Danielle smiled brightly, brushing her hair behind her ear. "She did all the work. I just helped her see how much she had in her." "Well," Ethan said, clapping his hands together, "this calls for celebration. I say we find the greasiest, cheesiest, most ridiculous pizza in the city." Abby raised her hand like she was pledging an oath. I second that. They all laughed and climbed into their cars, music playing and windows cracked as the cool night air rushed in. Just a family and Danielle celebrating the win of a lifetime. Chapter 16. The little pizzeria on the corner was buzzing with energy, bright lights, checkered tablecloths, and the mouth-watering smell of garlic and melted cheese floating through the air. Abby sat at the center of the booth, still in her competition gear, her medal resting proudly around her neck. Her trophy stood in the middle of the table like a centerpiece. Ethan raised his soda like a champagne glass. To the champion. To Abby. Kelly echoed, clinking her glass against his. To the most graceful and fierce dancer I've ever seen, Danielle added with a grin. Abby laughed, cheeks flushed from more than just the performance. Okay, you guys are making me feel like royalty. You are royalty, Ethan said. Did you see the look on Lynch's face when they announced your name? I thought her eyes were going to pop out of her head. Everyone at the table burst into laughter. She looked like she was trying to clap through gritted teeth, Kelly added. I almost felt bad for her. Danielle raised an eyebrow. Almost. They laughed again. Honestly, Danielle said as she leaned back in the booth, her tone a little softer now. She didn't just lose a competition tonight. She lost someone great. Abby blinked, touched by the sincerity in Danielle's voice. But that's all right, Danielle added with a wink. Because now, I got you. The family laughed again, but this time it was different, full of pride, affection, and something deeper. A bond. A shared victory. A found family. Abby smiled wide, looking around at the people who had supported her through every step, every doubt, every routine. She didn't need Mrs. Lynch's approval. She didn't need anyone to define her worth anymore. She had found her place. And she wasn't letting it go. The stars were just beginning to peek through the night sky as the Stricklands stepped out of the pizzeria, full of food and joy and a shared sense of triumph. In the parking lot, they lingered by the cars, reluctant to end the night. Kelly pulled Danielle into a hug first. Thank you again for everything. We're so lucky Abby found you. Danielle smiled softly. I'm the lucky one. Abby wrapped her arms around Danielle too. You're the best, Danielle. Danielle hugged her tight, then stepped back as Ethan reached out with a smile. I don't know how we can ever repay you for what you've done, he started. Really you? But before he could finish, Danielle suddenly stepped forward and threw her arms around him. It wasn't gentle or casual. It was tight, clinging. Her cheek against his chest. Ethan froze for a moment, then gently patted her back. Hey, it's okay. She didn't say a word, just held on for a second longer. Then as quickly as she'd grabbed him, she let go, gave a small, hurried smile and turned toward her car. Drive safe. Kelly called after her, but Danielle didn't respond. She got in, started the engine and pulled out of the lot without another word. The Stricklands stood in silence for a moment. Kelly slowly turned to Ethan, her face said it all. What? He asked, raising his hands. She narrowed her eyes. Don't play dumb. But hug. That was weird. Ethan exhaled. Kelly, come on. No, seriously. That was not a normal, thanks for the pizza, hug. I'm not minimizing it, he said, holding up a hand. Yeah, it was unusual. But I can tell you it wasn't flirty. Not even close. Kelly folded her arms. Then what was it? He hesitated, then glanced toward the road where Danielle had disappeared. Kelly's arms slowly dropped. She held on like a child, Kel. Not like a woman. They stood there quietly for a moment, the night suddenly feeling colder than before. Back at home, neither of them said much for the rest of the evening. But long after the lights were off and the house was quiet, Kelly lay awake, staring at the ceiling, one thought turning over and over in her mind. Why did Danielle hug him like that? Chapter 17. The studio was quiet, bathed in the soft afternoon light that streamed through the high windows. Abby and Danielle stood at the center of the floor, barefoot and breathing hard from another practice run. Danielle crossed her arms and gave her a look that was both proud and a little in awe. You're getting stronger by the day, Abby. That last routine, that wasn't just good. That was professional. Abby smiled and wiped the sweat from her brow with her sleeve. Thanks. I've been trying to channel my inner you. Danielle laughed. Careful, she's intense. Abby looked down, a more thoughtful smile spreading across her face. But seriously, thank you. Not just for teaching me how to dance. Danielle tilted her head. Then what else? For teaching me how to respect myself, Abby said. how to carry myself like I matter. I look back at some of the things Mrs. Lynch had us doing what she wanted us to do, and I just think, that's not the kind of person I want to be. That's not the kind of daughter I want to be. Danielle's expression softened. She said nothing, just listened. I don't ever want to dishonor my parents like that, Abby continued. Not by showing skin just to impress a judge or trying to get attention by dancing like, you know, like a product, Danielle said quietly. Abby nodded. Exactly. They sat down on the floor, stretching as the sun warmed the wooden panels beneath them. Abby said after a moment, there was this guest teacher at the last studio. She came in to give us some extra pointers. Danielle raised a brow. Oh yeah. She was in her 50s, maybe older. She said she'd trained dancers for some of the biggest pop stars in the world. I mean, legit stuff, music videos, world tours, all of it. That's pretty cool, Danielle said, genuinely impressed. But Abby wasn't smiling. She had amazing technique, Abby continued. Flawless. Her turns, her balance, her control. It was on another level. I mean, I couldn't even dream of doing what she did. Danielle nodded slowly. So why do you look like you just swallowed a lemon? Abby hesitated. She was wearing this one-piece bodysuit, like a thong. The kind where the whole back is cut high and tight. Super clingy. You could see everything. Danielle's eyebrows shot up and her whole face shifted, her mouth tightening into a sharp line. Seriously? Abby nodded. It was hard to even watch her because it felt so uncomfortable. And some of the girls were giggling, but some just looked down. It just didn't feel right. Danielle looked furious. That's disgusting. She could have worn literally anything else. She didn't seem embarrassed either, Abby added. She walked around like it was totally normal. And I thought, if someone like her can be that influential while dressed like that, what does that say to the rest of us? Danielle stood and began pacing slowly, her jaw tense. It says exactly what the industry's been saying for years. That no matter how talented a woman is, people won't look unless she's also selling herself. That her value is only worth what she's willing to reveal. Abby watched, her eyes wide. But we know that's a lie. That's not going to be you, Danielle said firmly. You're not going to shrink to fit someone else's twisted standards. You're not going to compromise your integrity for applause. You won with your beauty and your talent. I know, Abby said. You've already taught me that. Danielle stopped pacing, the anger slowly fading from her expression. I just don't get how someone can be that accomplished, Abby whispered, and still not know the example they're setting. Danielle gave her a knowing look. Some people don't want to set an example. They just want to be looked at. There's a difference. And in that moment, Abby understood something deeper about her teacher. Danielle didn't just teach dance. She was fighting for something much bigger. And now Abby was too. Later that night, the studio lights were off and the world outside quiet, but Danielle's bedroom glowed faintly with the light of her laptop screen. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing with speed and precision. Patricia Lemon. It didn't take long to find her. Dozens of articles, interviews, glowing praise from the entertainment world. Photos of her at awards ceremonies, arm in arm with young stars. Social media accounts filled with curated posts of empowered dancers and flashy performances. But Danielle wasn't looking for praise. She scrolled past the accolades and tapped deeper. Personal records, legal documents, old blog posts, photos from tagged events, some far more casual than professional. Women she had dated, a now quiet divorce from an ex-wife. Public check-ins, reviews, and one pinned geotag that revealed a small studio not far from the one Danielle owned. Danielle's face was still, expression unreadable. Until she whispered to herself, "You're not going to get away with that." Her fingers trembled slightly as she stared at Patricia's photo. A woman who smiled with pride while knowingly performing in front of high schoolers in a barely there bodysuit. And in that moment it happened. A voice in her head, a man's voice. Raspy, close and dark. "She don't even know what she's doing to me in that little thing." Danielle's chest seized, the air caught in her lungs. The words echoed too clearly, too vividly. Chapter 18. The afternoon sun warmed the front porch as Danielle pulled into the Strickland driveway in her sleek black car. The engine purred softly before she shut it off and stepped out with a warm smile. Her long dark hair was pulled into a stylish high ponytail. And her outfit was attention-grabbing in every direction. Tight, high-waisted leather pants that hugged her curves, paired with a crisp white button-up shirt tucked just enough to show off her waist. Kelly opened the front door just as Abby bounded down the steps, a little purse over her shoulder and a huge smile on her face. "You sure about this?" Kelly asked Ethan, who stood behind her with his arms crossed. "She's with Danielle," Ethan replied casually. "And her friends. It's the mall, not a rave. Relax." "I am relaxed," Kelly said, not sounding relaxed at all. "It's just... Danielle's what, 18? Why is she spending so much time with a 14-year-old? It's weird." "She's a mentor, Kel," Ethan said. "That girl turned Abby's life around. Plus you've met her. She's respectful. Smart. Don't overthink it." Abby waved from the car window. "Love you guys. Be back by 8. Danielle gave a charming little wave before sliding back into the driver's seat. The car pulled away and Kelly watched it vanish down the street, arms still folded tightly. "I just don't want her getting too attached," she murmured.
Want to know what happens next? Subscribe to my Patreon and unlock the rest of the story. Who is Danielle? What's behind her fascination with the Stricklands? Is Kelly right to be wary of her? Is Abby in danger? And what did that hug between Danielle and Ethan really mean? Should they keep their distance? Or is it already too late? Find out now. The link is in the comments.